One of the things that Jesus talks about when the rich young ruler comes to him and asks them, what is the greatest commandment? And he says, love the Lord your God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But Jesus says something very peculiar after that. He says, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, on these two commandments, rest all of the law and the prophets. So any law in the Bible, anything that any of the prophets that ever said that were worth their salt, Jesus, like, it's these two laws. And so for him to, that second law, love your neighbor as yourself, that's a big deal. And so I feel like the implications of the gospel is, I've extended grace to you, I've saved you, it's by grace you've been saved, but now you have a responsibility for kingdom living, right? So Paul in Ephesians 4 is saying you need to endeavor to keep the peace, the bond of peace by the Spirit. And so there's this working for peace. And I think this idea of racial reconciliation is just an outflowing. It's an outflowing of our responsibility for kingdom living, which is to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we should be endeavoring that. And what makes that hard sometimes is when we view someone else as the other, right? But Jesus is like, gives us the parable of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus is like, no, there is no other, there is no other. Anyone who is in need is your neighbor, right? And so in simplest form, racism, racial reconciliation, or racism is a failure to fulfill what James says is the royal law. Jesus talked about it too, is loving your neighbor as yourself. So I think the gospel, it's clear that the gospel has implications for the way and a responsibility for us to live a certain way.